The Vale Nebula stretched across the window of the Frontier Research Station like a river of light. Colors of blue, purple, and green shimmered in the distance, shifting slowly as if the stars themselves were breathing. Inside the quiet corridors of Station Dawnspire, scientists, traders, and explorers moved about with steady rhythm. For most, this was just another outpost at the edge of charted space. For Dr. Adrian Hale, it was the most important place he had ever been. Adrian was a young xenolinguist, tall, with sharp eyes that often looked like they were lost in thought. He had spent years studying alien languages, from digital codes of machine-based civilizations to the strange pheromone trails of insectoid empires. But all of that was only preparation for this moment. A new species, the Aelari, had arrived at the station, and they did not use sound, symbols, or even gestures. They were telepaths. The news had spread quickly. The Aelari were crystalline beings, their bodies shaped from living mineral, refracting light like cut glass. They glowed faintly from within, as if a small star lived in their chests. No one knew much about them except that they were peaceful and extremely private. Only a few had ever made contact with humans. Now one of them had come to meet. Adrian walked into the meeting chamber, his pulse racing. The room was quiet, filled with the low hum of the station systems. At the far end stood Ceres, the Aelari envoy. She was tall, her form both delicate and sharp like a sculpture of crystal. When she moved, faint ripples of light shimmered across her body. Her eyes were faceted surfaces that caught and scattered light in strange patterns. The moment Adrian stepped in, something happened. He felt a strange pressure in his head, like someone brushing against his thoughts. It wasn't painful, just new. Then, before he could prepare himself, Ceres gasped. The sound was soft but clear, like wind moving through glass. She placed one hand over her chest as if surprised. Adrian froze, unsure what he had done. "I heard you," Ceres said, though her mouth never moved. Her voice was inside his mind, gentle and layered like a chorus speaking in harmony. Adrian blinked. "You heard me?" "Yes," she replied, her crystal frame glowing faintly brighter. "You did not send words. You did not shape intention. But your thought, your unguarded thought, it was loud. So very loud." Adrian realized what had happened. The moment he had walked in, his brain had betrayed him. He had looked at Ceres, at the way the nebula light reflected through her crystal body, and he had thought, beautiful. He hadn't said it aloud. He hadn't even meant to focus on it. But she had felt it. His face grew hot. I'm sorry. That wasn't... I didn't mean... But Ceres raised her hand, stopping him. "No, do not apologize. It is strange. Strange, but not unpleasant. Your mind is unlike the others." Adrian frowned. "The others?" She nodded, moving closer, her crystal body giving off faint musical chimes with each step. "When we Aelari speak mind to mind, it is calm, clear, polished like smooth stone. Your thought was not calm. It was a storm. Bright, heavy, impossible to ignore." Adrian rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. "Yeah, humans can be messy in the head." "Messy," Ceres repeated softly as if testing the word. "Yes, messy, but alive." She tilted her head, the light inside her shifting like a heartbeat. "Tell me, human, do you always think with such strength?" Adrian almost laughed. "Honestly, that wasn't strength. That was just me trying not to embarrass myself." For the first time, Ceres made a sound that might have been laughter. It was like a bell struck gently, a soft ring that echoed in the air. Adrian found himself smiling, even though he still felt nervous. They sat across from one another at the table, though the table felt unnecessary. Words were almost unnecessary too, but Adrian kept speaking out loud while Ceres replied in his mind. He explained human communication, how sound carried meaning, how gestures added weight, how writing captured thought for the future. Ceres listened, fascinated, her crystal surface pulsing with shifting light patterns. When Adrian asked her about the Aelari, she explained carefully. "We live in silence," her voice whispered in his mind. "We do not use sound as you do. Our thoughts are our voices, but because of this we are careful. We keep our minds calm. If not, the noise would overwhelm us. And me walking in here with a brain full of noise just ruined that calm," Adrian said with a small grin. But Ceres shook her head. "No, it startled me, but it also moved me. Your thoughts are wild rivers. They cannot be polished. They cannot be silenced. They rush and collide and burst with colors." She paused, then added softly, "It is unlike anything I have felt before." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "So, is that good or bad?" Cirrus tilted her head again, her faceted eyes reflecting his image a dozen times. "I do not know yet." Over the next days, Adrian and Cirrus met often. At first, their talks were formal, focused on exchange of knowledge. Adrian would show her how humans laughed, how they cried, how they dreamed. Cirrus would share fragments of Alari history, their long silence among the stars, their struggle to survive against races that tried to control minds instead of understanding them. But as the meetings went on, things changed. Adrian found himself thinking of her even when he wasn't with her. And every time he returned, Cirrus seemed to react before he even said a word. She would gasp softly, crystal light brightening, as if his presence alone stirred something in her. One evening, while the nebula glowed faintly outside the station, Adrian asked her directly, "Why do you always react when I think of you?" "You gasp. Like it shocks you?" Cirrus hesitated. For a moment, silence filled the room, though Adrian could feel her presence brushing against his mind. Finally, she answered, "Because your thoughts of me are alive. They do not move with reason, but with feeling. You see me and you do not measure my form or study my pattern. You feel. And that feeling strikes like lightning." Adrian swallowed. He wanted to say more, but the words stuck. Cirrus leaned closer, her crystal edges glowing faintly warmer. "Among my people, thoughts are streams. Predictable, calm, slow. Yours are storms. They crash without warning. They are impossible to guard against. That is why I gasp, human. Because when you think of me, I cannot ignore it. I cannot shield myself. It is too strong." Adrian looked into her faceted eyes and finally said softly, "Maybe that's just how humans are. We don't hold back well." Cirrus did not speak for a while. Then very gently she placed her crystalline hand on the table close to his. She did not touch him, but the light between them flickered as if recognizing the closeness. Then perhaps, she whispered in his mind, "It is time I learn what it means, not to hold back." That night, Adrian could not sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, his thoughts circling endlessly. And every time he thought of Cirrus, her light, her strange laughter, her presence, he wondered if she was hearing it. He wondered if somewhere on the station she was gasping again. For the first time, Adrian realized that this was more than study. This was more than first contact. It was something deeper, something that made his heart race in ways he couldn't explain. And far across the station, in her private chamber filled with quiet light, Cirrus sat in silence, glowing softly, her crystalline hands pressed to her chest. She was hearing him, and she could not push his thoughts away. The station was never truly quiet. Even in the deep hours of artificial night, the hum of engines and the whisper of air circulation filled every corridor. But lately there had been something new, something wrong. A low vibration, not mechanical, not natural, crawling through the minds of those sensitive enough to notice it. Adrian Hale had been feeling it for 2 days now. At first he thought it was stress or lack of sleep. But the sensation was different. It wasn't in his body. It was in his thoughts, like faint whispers brushing against the edge of his mind. He sat in the observation deck, staring at the shifting lights of the Vale Nebula. A mug of cold coffee sat forgotten at his side. His eyes were tired, but his thoughts refused to rest. When Cirrus entered, he didn't even notice at first. Only when her faint chime-like steps reached his ears did he turn his head. She stood by the doorway, her crystal form glowing faintly dimmer than usual. "You feel it too," she said, her voice inside his head. Adrian exhaled slowly. "So it's not just me." She moved closer, sitting across from him, the nebula light scattering through her facets. "It is not only you. Many on the station feel uneasy, though they do not understand why. But for me, it is clearer." "The echo is familiar," Adrian frowned. "Echo?" Cirrus nodded, the light inside her chest pulsing faintly. "Yes, an echo of the Vorath." The name itself carried weight. Adrian sat straighter. "You've mentioned them before. Predators of the mind?" "Yes." Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. "Long ago, before humanity had touched the stars, the Vorath fed upon my people. They were not like you. They did not speak. They consumed. They drowned our thoughts with their hunger until we could not tell our voices from theirs. We survived, barely, but we never forgot the feeling of their presence. And now here, at this edge of space, I feel them again. Adrian shivered, not from cold, but from the way her words pressed against his mind. He rubbed his temple. So that's what I've been feeling. Like someone's trying to whisper, but never loud enough to understand. Saris leaned forward slightly, her crystalline edges catching nebula light. The Vorath whispers are not meant to be understood. They are meant to erode, to weaken, to open cracks in the mind so they may enter. Adrian looked out at the stars. If they're really out there, why now? Why here? Her answer was slow. Perhaps because of me. Because of us. The Aelari are old prey. My kind's presence may have drawn their attention. Adrian clenched his fists. Then we're sitting in a trap. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and unspoken. Then Saris's light pulsed again. But there is something different. When I stand near you, the echo weakens. It does not vanish, but it struggles. Your thoughts are dissonant to it. Too wild to match, Adrian blinked. You mean my messy brain is good for something? Saris's voice carried the faint tone of a smile. More than good. It cuts through the echo like fire through ice. Adrian leaned back, running a hand through his hair. That's crazy. I don't even know how I'm doing it. You are not doing it. You are being. The Vorath feed on order, on predictability. The minds of the Aelari are rivers, smooth, clear, flowing in patterns. Easy to drink from. But your mind... She paused, searching for the right words. Your mind is a storm. Sudden, chaotic, endless. They cannot drink from it without choking. Adrian chuckled softly. So basically, I'm poison to them. Saris tilted her head. Perhaps, or perhaps you are something they cannot yet understand. The next day, the disturbances grew stronger. Machinery on the station flickered. Communication signals crackled with interference as if invisible static filled the air. People grew restless, reporting nightmares they could not explain. Adrian noticed he was dreaming too. But unlike the others, his dreams were sharp, vivid, and defiant. He dreamed of fire cutting through fog, of storms chasing shadows, of laughter echoing in empty halls. Each time he woke, Saris was there, watching him with quiet light. She explained what she saw. Your dreams resist them. Your fear does not weaken you, it strengthens you. It builds walls they cannot climb. Adrian didn't feel strong. He felt tired, stretched thin. But when he looked into Saris's faceted eyes, reflecting him a dozen times, he felt a strange kind of purpose. That evening, alarms echoed through the station. Systems failed all at once, lights flickered, doors sealed, comms went dead. Panic spread quickly. Adrian ran through the corridors with Saris beside him, her crystal body shimmering faintly brighter as if resisting the unseen storm. They reached the central hub, where crews were shouting and scrambling to stabilize power. But the real problem wasn't the machines. It was the people. Several officers sat frozen in place, eyes wide, trembling, murmuring nonsense as if caught in invisible nets. Saris knelt beside one of them, her hand glowing faintly as she touched the man's temple. She flinched back immediately, the light inside her chest flashing like a warning. The Vorath are pressing harder. They are testing us, Adrian's stomach tightened. Can you fight them off? Not alone. She looked at him, her faceted gaze sharp. But with you. Perhaps, Adrian swallowed. What do I have to do? Saris reached toward him, her crystal hand hovering close to his forehead. I must link with you. Share your storm, but it will not be gentle. Your thoughts are lightning. They may burn me, and your mind may be flooded by mine. Are you willing? Adrian hesitated only a moment before nodding. If it keeps them out of people's heads, then yes. Her hand touched his forehead. Instantly, Adrian felt the world split open. His thoughts, usually his alone, burst outward like sparks. At the same time, Saris's presence poured in. Calm rivers, flowing light, the careful clarity of a mind trained to silence. For a moment, it was overwhelming. Chaos crashing into calm, storm colliding with still water. Saris gasped again, but not in fear. Her voice trembled inside his head. So much, so loud, so alive, Adrian gritted his teeth. Sorry, this is what my brain's like all the time. Do not apologize, she whispered. Hold steady, focus, he tried. At first, his thoughts were everywhere. Memories, fears, stray images. But then he noticed something. When he focused not on silence, but on rhythm, his thoughts shaped themselves into something Saris could hold on to. He imagined a beat, a pulse, like music. The storm found a pattern, not rigid but alive. Saris steadied, anchoring herself in the rhythm. Together their minds pushed outward. Adrian felt the whispers pressing in, dark, cold, hungry. But when they touched his storm, they recoiled. His wild thoughts burned against them like fire. Cirrus's voice came stronger now. Yes, this is it. They cannot drink from you. They cannot twist you. They choke on your chaos. Adrian pushed harder, imagining laughter, imagining fire, imagining impossible futures. The whispers cracked, retreating into the dark. The officers around them gasped, waking as if from drowning. When it was over, Adrian collapsed back into his chair, breathing hard. Cirrus withdrew her hand slowly, her body glowing brighter than he had ever seen. You, she whispered in his mind. You are unlike any I have ever known. Adrian managed a weak smile. I'll take that as a compliment. She tilted her head, her faceted eyes shimmering. It is more than a compliment. It is hope for both of us. Later that night, the station was calm again, but everyone knew it was only temporary. The Vorath were still out there. The echo was still growing. Adrian sat in the quiet of his cabin, staring at the ceiling. Sarah stood near the window, gazing at the nebula. Her light pulsed softly in rhythm with his heartbeat. They will come again, she said. I know, Adrian replied. And next time they'll hit harder. She turned toward him, her voice steady. But next time we will be ready. Together. Adrian nodded slowly, his chest tightening with a mix of fear and determination. He knew this was no longer just about studying alien minds. This was survival. And somehow his messy, storm-filled human brain was at the center of it. As he lay back, fighting sleep, one thought stayed with him. Every time he thought of her, Cirrus gasped. And now with the Vorath closing in, maybe that gasp was not just surprise. Maybe it was the beginning of something that could save them both. The station had survived the first wave, but no one believed it was over. The engineers fixed the power systems. The doctors treated those who had collapsed under the Vorath whispers, and life on Dawnspire continued. Yet beneath every conversation and every laugh was fear. Everyone felt it. The shadows in the mind were still there, waiting. For Adrian Hale, fear had become constant. He could not close his eyes without imagining the cold whispers pressing at the edge of his mind. And yet, he also carried something else. A strange, growing bond with Cirrus. Since the night they joined minds, things had changed between them. Adrian no longer had to wonder if she could hear him. He knew she could, and Cirrus no longer gasped just from surprise. Now she reacted with recognition, as though each thought of his carried meaning beyond words. One evening, they met again in the quiet of the observation deck. The nebula stretched before them, glowing faintly as if watching. Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhaustion heavy on him, while Sarah stood beside the window, her crystalline body catching starlight. You have not slept much, Sarah said gently in his mind. Adrian gave a tired smile. Hard to sleep when nightmares keep trying to crawl into your brain. Her light dimmed slightly like a sigh. I can shield you for a time, but the Vorath grow bolder. They are pushing against the walls of this station. Sooner or later they will break through. Adrian rubbed his temples. Then we need something stronger. What we did before, it worked, but it won't hold forever. Sarah turned toward him, her faceted eyes gleaming. Yes, which is why I must ask you to go further. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Further? You mean another link? More than a link, she whispered, a bond. Not a momentary touch, but a deeper connection. It will let us merge our strengths fully. Adrian hesitated. And what does that mean for us? Her voice grew quiet, almost fragile. It means you will see me as no human has ever seen, and I will feel you more deeply than any Aelari has ever felt another being. There will be no walls between us. No secrets. Only silence or song. Adrian's chest tightened. The idea of someone knowing everything inside him, every memory, every flaw, every shame, terrified him. But when he looked at Saris, he saw no fear in her gaze. Only trust, he nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. The bonding ritual took place in Saris's chamber, a room filled with gentle light. Crystalline structures grew along the walls like living sculptures, humming softly as if alive. Adrian sat cross-legged on the floor while Saris knelt across from him. Close your eyes, she instructed. He obeyed. Her hand, cool and smooth, pressed lightly against his forehead. At once his thoughts burst outward again, but this time Saris did not simply touch them. She wove into them, guiding, shaping, anchoring. Adrian felt her calm river flowing into his storm. It was overwhelming. His heart raced as flashes of memory, both his and hers, collided. He saw her world, towers of crystal rising from seas of light, skies filled with radiant storms, her people walking in silence. He felt their discipline, their serenity, their centuries of stillness. At the same time, Saris gasped softly as Adrian's memories surged into her. She felt the rush of childhood laughter, the pain of loss, the stubborn fire of human defiance. She saw his world, oceans of blue, skies filled with roaring thunder, cities burning with noise and life. So much. Her voice trembled. So many colors, so many feelings. Adrian struggled to hold steady. "Sorry, it's messy in here." "No," she whispered. "It is alive. Your mind is not a storm only. It is music." Adrian blinked. "Music?" "Yes," Saris said. "I feel it, rhythm, pulse, beat. You shape chaos into patterns without even trying. That is why I can hold on to you. You are not only storm, you are song." Adrian let out a shaky laugh. "Never thought my brain would be called music before." Together, they found balance. Saris anchored herself in his rhythm, while Adrian learned to focus not by silencing his thoughts, but by letting them flow like melodies. Their bond grew stronger, a harmony between storm and river, and then through the bond they both felt it. The Vorath. Whispers swelled against their joined minds, stronger than before. But this time Adrian and Saris stood together. Where the Vorath pressed with hunger, Adrian's imagination flared, images of fire, laughter, impossible futures. Where the Vorath tried to mimic voices, Saris's calm precision cut through, separating truth from lies. But something else stirred. Deep in the echoes they felt movement. The Vorath were not only whispering, they were waking. When they withdrew, both gasped for air. Adrian wiped sweat from his forehead. Saris's light flickered like a flame struggling in the wind. "They're not just echoes," Adrian said, his voice hoarse. "They're alive. And they're coming." Saris nodded, her glow dim. "The Vorath are not shadows of the past. They were only sleeping, and now they hunger again." Adrian stood, pacing. "Then we don't have much time. The station can't fight them, not with weapons, not with ships. This is all in the mind." Saris's faceted eyes locked onto him. "Which is why we must turn your storm into a weapon. You alone can resist them, but with me you can strike them." Adrian raised his eyebrows. "Strike them? You mean go on the offensive?" "Yes," Saris said. "The Vorath have always preyed on order. They drain predictable patterns, but your thoughts are unpredictable, unrefined, noisy. If we amplify that noise, we can drown them, drive them back." Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. "So you want me to blast them with human chaos?" Saris tilted her head. "Not chaos, song, your mind's rhythm. That is what unsettles them. That is what they cannot endure." Adrian chuckled, though it was humorless. "So humanity's greatest strength is being a noisy, stubborn mess. Figures." Saris's voice grew softer. "Not a mess, a spark. Uncontrolled, but brilliant. That is what I feel each time you think of me. That is why I gasp. Because your spark is unlike anything in the galaxy." Adrian froze at her words. His throat felt dry. He wanted to answer, but no words came. Instead, he nodded slowly. "Then let's use that spark before it's too late." Days turned into preparation. Adrian trained with Saris, learning to shape his thoughts into patterns she could amplify. Sometimes it was exhausting. His imagination would run too wild, overwhelming them both. Other times he would fall into despair, doubting if his mind was enough to stand against an ancient predator. But Saris never let him fall. She anchored him with her calm voice, her steady presence, reminding him that he was not alone. And slowly Adrian began to realize something. The bond was no longer just survival. It was trust. It was connection. It was something more. Late one night after another long session, Adrian slumped against the wall, eyes heavy. Saris sat beside him, her crystalline form glowing faintly in the dark. "You're always on my mind," Adrian murmured. "I know," she replied softly, her voice brushing against his thoughts. "Does it bother you?" he asked, half afraid of the answer. Saris tilted her head, her light pulsing gently. "It does not bother me. It moves me. Each time it reminds me of life beyond silence. Of song." Adrian looked at her, his chest tight. He wanted to say more, but exhaustion pulled him into sleep. As his eyes closed, he felt her presence wrap around his dreams, steady and bright. The next morning, the Vorath came closer. Everyone on the station felt it. The whispers louder, the machines failing again, the nightmares spreading. Fear gripped the crew, but Adrian and Saris stood ready. In the command center, officers shouted and systems blinked out one by one. But Adrian sat calmly, Saris at his side. Together they closed their eyes, joining their bond once more. This time Adrian did not fight his storm. He embraced it. He let his thoughts surge into rhythm, into song. Memories of laughter, flashes of fire, dreams of futures that could never be. Saris amplified it, turning noise into harmony, storm into symphony. The Vorath pressed in, their whispers dark and cold. But against the storm song of humanity they faltered. They recoiled, confused, unable to drink from the unpredictable fire. For the first time the predators felt fear. Adrian opened his eyes, breathing hard. They're pulling back. Saris's light flared brighter than ever. Yes, but they will return, stronger, and when they do, we must be ready to strike. Adrian nodded, his jaw set. Then we'll give them something they've never faced before. Together, they stood in the fading glow of the nebula, storm and river, silence and song, bound by something that could not be broken. And far beyond the stars, in the cold dark, the Vorath stirred. The alarms echoed through the research station like a drumbeat of fear. Red lights flashed along the corridors, and the distant thrum of the energy shields vibrated beneath Adrian's boots. He stood near the central observatory window, staring out into the black sea of space where shadows shifted like living smoke. The Vorath had arrived. Saris stood beside him, her crystalline body glowing faintly as her inner light pulsed with unease. Her voice echoed in his mind, calm yet firm. They are many, more than I feared. They sense us already. Adrian swallowed, his throat dry. And they're coming straight for us. The Vorath did not appear like any ship or fleet he had ever seen. They were waves of dark energy, pulsing and writhing, feeding on the mental signatures of every living thing they touched. Where they passed, silence followed. No communication, no thought, no will. They've been waiting centuries for this, Adrian whispered. Saris turned her luminous eyes toward him, and they have not faced a human mind before. Her faith in him was both comforting and terrifying. Adrian wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a trained psychic. He was a linguist, a man who studied patterns of thought and sound. But here now, that might be enough. The bond deep and serious reached out and touched his shoulder. The bond between them opened fully, stronger than ever before. Adrian felt her calmness like cool water on a burn, steadying his racing mind. In return, she felt his storm. Raw fear, determination, humor, memories and imagination bursting like fireworks. She gasped again as she always did when his emotions surged. But this time it was not surprise. It was recognition. Hold nothing back, she told him. The Vorath will not know how to hold you. Adrian nodded. He closed his eyes, focusing on the rhythm he had discovered before. Not discipline, not control, but music. He let thoughts rise and fall like waves, forming patterns of sound and song inside his mind. He thought of old human melodies, half-forgotten lullabies, the roar of crowds, the laughter of children. He thought of stories told around fires, of paintings on cave walls, of rockets climbing into the sky. Saris steadied the flow, amplifying the signal. Together they became something neither of them could be alone. The Vorath strike. The first wave of Vorath hit the station like a silent storm. Telepathic pressure slammed against Adrian's mind, a crushing weight that tried to silence every thought, every spark. He staggered, gripping the edge of the console. But where silence tried to reign, he answered with noise. He laughed, loud, unexpected, messy. The sound cracked through the pressure like lightning splitting the night. The Vorath faltered, confused by the sudden surge of emotion they could not predict. Adrian pushed harder. He imagined fire racing across the sky, the crash of thunder, the endless ocean waves. He thought of the wildest dreams humanity had ever dared. Flying machines, cities among the stars, impossible futures that became real only because someone believed they could. The Vorath recoiled. They had fed for centuries on orderly minds, on civilizations that thought in straight lines and perfect shapes. But this chaos was poison to them. Saris gasped as the bond surged with power. She guided his storm, turning the chaos into a weapon. Her mind shaped his wild emotions into a focused blast, sending it outward like a beacon of fire. A human storm. The station shook as the Vorath screamed. their voices echoing in every head across the colony. Crew members cried out, clutching their skulls. Adrian felt the pressure build again, stronger this time as the Vorath tried to smother him in endless darkness. He answered with light. Not real light, but memory. He thought of the sun rising over Earth's oceans, the crackle of campfires, the glow of neon streets at night. He thought of faces, his mother's smile, his father's hand on his shoulder, the friends he had lost and the ones still beside him. He thought of Ceres, her crystalline form shimmering, her gasp when she felt him, her voice in his mind. The Vorath tried to twist these images, but they failed. The more they pressed, the more chaotic and alive Adrian's mind became. He gave them everything, joy and sorrow, love and grief, anger and laughter. Ceres cried out, her voice ringing like crystal bells. They cannot hold you. Push, Adrian, push them back. Adrian roared inside his own mind, the sound echoing across the bond. The Vorath's shadow cracked and splintered like glass. The turning point. For the first time in centuries, the Vorath retreated. Their swarm drew back uncertain, their endless hunger shaken. Adrian collapsed to one knee, gasping for air, sweat running down his face. They're afraid, he whispered. They've never been afraid before. Ceres helped him to his feet, her crystalline hand steady on his arm. You are something new to them, something they cannot consume. But the battle was not over. The swarm circled, regrouping. They poured their strength into one last strike. A wall of silence so strong it felt like the stars themselves had gone out. Adrian felt his thoughts falter. The storm inside him flickered. Darkness closed in. The spark, and then in the silence, Adrian remembered something small, something simple, a spark, the memory of holding a candle as a child during a power outage. The way one tiny flame had pushed back the dark for an entire room. He smiled through the pain. I don't need to fight them with everything, he whispered. I just need to show them the spark. Ceres tightened the bond, ready to follow his lead. Adrian reached deep. Not for chaos this time, but for the smallest, most human thing he could hold. Hope. He sent it out like a single flame in endless night. The Vorath slammed against it and broke. Their silence could not consume hope. Because hope was not orderly, not predictable. It was a leap into the unknown, a refusal to surrender even when surrender made sense. It was the essence of humanity, small yet unbreakable. The swarm shattered. Shadows dissolved into nothing. The galaxy's oldest predators fled into the dark, broken by a single human mind that refused to go quiet. Aftermath. The station fell silent, not with fear, but with relief. The crew staggered back to their posts, realizing they were still alive. Lights flickered on, systems returned to normal, and the shadow outside the windows was gone. Adrian leaned heavily on the console, exhausted. Ceres stood beside him, her light glowing brighter than ever. You did it, she whispered into his thoughts. You drove them away. Adrian shook his head. We did it. You gave me focus. Without you, I'd have burned out. Ceres's crystalline eyes shimmered. And without you, I would never have seen the human spark. That is why I gasped, Adrian. Not because your mind is overwhelming, but because it is alive in a way no other mind has ever been. He laughed softly, though his voice was weak. So you're saying I'm special? She tilted her head, her inner light flickering like a smile. You are human, and that is enough. Always on his mind days later, the galaxy would whisper of what had happened. The Aelari recorded it as proof that humanity was not merely another young species, but something different, something unpredictable and dangerous to their enemies. But for Adrian, the memory that stayed was simpler. Ceres walking beside him in the quiet corridors, her presence a steady hum in his mind. She was still there, always there, connected to him in a way words could never capture. He thought of her again without meaning to. She gasped softly, the sound both familiar and new. Adrian smiled. Still not used to me thinking about you? Her voice brushed against his thoughts, warm and gentle. No, and I never want to be. He knew then that the bond they shared was not just a tool or a weapon. It was a choice. A connection born not of fear or survival, but of trust. And as the stars stretched out before them, Adrian felt a quiet certainty. Humanity's spark would burn across the galaxy, and she would always be on his mind.